Of teaching and learning on the flexible learning. As they say, data is the new science, and that's basically our theme for the day. As we will be hearing our speakers and paper presentations, and then in the afternoon, we'll be talking about data science. Without further ado, let me introduce to you our first invited speaker. Our first invited speaker, with over 25 years of technology experience, he has been creating, delivering, and implementing business transformation solutions aligned with business strategies and objectives, improving business performance and revenue generation. He is highly accomplished in conducting research, building technological architecture, product and business development, and delivery. In addition, our first speaker for today is passionate about managing teams and providing targeted training and development for optimal employee performance and increased productivity. Our speaker has technical proficiency in cloud-based services, over-the-top OTT media services, systems and network administration, database administration, data analytics, object-oriented development, and agile development practices. He has led successful critical digital transformation projects in top enterprises worldwide. And take note, including ABS-CBN, Z Media Corporation Ltd. Of USA, Microsoft, and Colgate Palmolive. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to introduce our first invited speaker, Mr. Eugene Paden, the Chief Technology Officer of Ray Business Technologies Incorporated. Your screen is yours, sir.
Thank you, Dave. Let me just start to do this one. Where they do the share the screen. Okay, here you go. Screen one. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we see your screen.
Thank you, Dave. I don't know who you were talking about in your introduction. That might be some other guy. Maing buntag, magandang umaga, buenos dias, and good morning. And it's good evening for me. I'm based in the US, and so I'm going to walk you through and based on the recap from what I've heard yesterday is that you guys are really doing some deep discussions on AI, which makes me really glad and sad at the same time, because at my time when I was studying computer science in USD, there was really not much that we can do. We have to learn C, and then that's it, or BASIC or Pascal. So you guys are really more advanced now. Anyway, so this morning I will talk about how we created an AI-based software as a service, and it's being deployed and available to customers worldwide, and how my team created it, and what were the challenges we faced, and walk you through what it actually does. So the agenda for my talk this morning is just talking about just a short intro on AI, and then talk about our product AI Munchie, what are the features, how it works, what are the kinds of integrations that we did for it, the dashboard and reports, show you some sample screens. What were the challenges that we faced when we created this product, and what are the clear advantages? And then after that one, we'll do into Q&A session, and hopefully you guys would really come up and ask me difficult question. You can ask me any question that you want. Okay. So just a short intro on artificial intelligence. It's my understanding is that it's our way of building smart machines capable of doing tasks that imitate the traits of the human mind, like reasoning and problem solving and planning and optimal decision making, sensory perceptions. And you will see this in a lot of different applications. In transportation alone, we've seen this one in the new cars that are coming out. They have self-parking. You see that, it's like, okay, just turn it on and then it will just park on itself. When you are traveling at high speeds, you also have adaptive cruise control, wherein if the car in front of you slows down, your car also slows down without you really doing any braking. Now, in traffic management, in traffic light management, we also see AI being deployed here so that you can minimize the congestion. And if you haven't heard of Tesla, then they already piloted a lot of the autonomous driving. It's not fully self-driving yet, but a lot of it is like you can do hands-off. And you've seen people also just sleeping while they're riding in their cars. And this is really dangerous when they do that. But the development is there. When you talk about manufacturing, we have robots doing work in non-ergonomic conditions. You also have predictive smart maintenance. So you have a lot of machines and equipment that function. And before they break down, we have to predict as to, okay, when do we do the preventive maintenance? Same thing that you do with your car, with your motorcycle. The way we do it is like every 3,000 miles, every 5,000 miles, 5,000 kilometers, 10,000 kilometers. And sometimes it doesn't even have to do that. When you have predictive smart maintenance, you only have to pay when you think that they will break down based on historical information. And then you also get early alerts on probable quality issues. On healthcare, we've seen this one. We have very fast diagnosis using patients' health data. So you're looking at data that based on your diagnostics, and they can really give you a good idea of what's wrong with you. You also have image scanning for disease detection. So when you just do, you do MRIs before, right? But aside from that one, they just look at, I just had like a test wherein they look at my hair, they look at my fingernails, and they look at other stuff, and it's like, okay, this might be something that's wrong with you because this is what we have learned in the data that we have. In finance and banking, it used to be, it's so hard to get a credit card. Now, because of artificial intelligence and the risk analysis, or somebody who can get a credit card, now it's so easy as long as you have, because before you have to show a lot of income, you have a stable job, a lot of those things. But now, like, you can't go around without a credit card, especially if you start working. And this is not only for credit cards, for loan. When you're loaning, or you're taking a loan for a car, your loan for your house, your actual interest rate is basically based on your metrics, based on how they give you a credit score, especially in the US here, they give you a credit score, and based on that one, they'll give you, some would get a higher interest rate because they were higher risk, some would get really low interest rates. And then you have automatic trading in the stock market. You don't even need somebody else. They can trade for you in split seconds or milliseconds, and they're spending a lot because that window is so much that whatever they spend, they also do make money in just milliseconds. From human resources, AI assisted recruitment, you will see this, especially in the US. You submit your resume. What happens is that it does a screening automatically whether you will be even getting into the first review of somebody. Before it gets to somebody human, it has been screened already by AI and say, okay, this is a probable fit. This one is not a good fit. Just throw them away. Okay. You can also predict attrition of employees. So you will see, if you really set it up properly, you will know which employees will eventually go at what point in their time. And that gives you an early warning so that you can preempt before they leave. On agriculture, there's a lot here. You were talking about the eggplants earlier, but in the US, they're actually looking at weather patterns. They're looking at the topography and then the satellite mapping, and they see the pictures, and they actually do targeted either on watering or pesticides or even the fertilizer. So they can do all of those things so that you don't just do a blanket execution. So you save a lot on doing that. You also do monitoring of crop and soil condition, and even in my yard, it's not even agriculture, in my yard. So we used to water our garden or yard twice a week, right? But I have a machine it has a detector that says, okay, it rained yesterday, it rained the other day, and then it will say, okay, no need for you to water this week. maybe 2 days, 3 days after, because your soil is too good. So, and there's a lot, e-commerce and devices. And one way or another, you might not know it, you are using AI every day now. You cannot get away from AI. Every time that you search on Google, that's AI there. Every time that you go on Facebook, what happens, what comes out in your feed, it's driven by AI. Once you go and browse Tinder, and then you swipe left or swipe right, there's AI somewhere there. If you use Grinder, sorry, it's the same thing, right? So whatever application you're using, TikTok, how does it do all of those animations for you and determine, okay, where do you look? There's AI involved there. So in every asset of what you're doing, aspect of your life now, AI is a major part, whether you know or you do it or not, okay? Now, in the context of how we're doing it is that from our end, we're helping businesses, and we can boost based on AI alone. It doesn't matter whether you use our product or any AI, any company that adopts AI can boost productivity by up to 40%. Just take an example. You receive your email, right? How many spams do you get a day? Spam email. Those were one of the first consumer AI that we just take for granted. Spam detection is based on AI. And it just grows and grows. So by that alone, the productivity increases for you. Now implement that across all of your different business processes. That's how important and powerful it is. Now, you guys who are studying AI now, you are in great demand, because you will be contributing to about 15.7 trillion. 15.7 trillion, not million, not billion. I don't even know how many zeros come after 15 when you do trillions, right? And but that's in 7 years. So by the time that you graduate, the ones who are studying now in AI, if you haven't decided yet, hey, it used to be computer science, right? You want to do computer science? That was my time. Greg and I, you said, we'll do computer science. Now it's like, just as basic, let's go into AI and like, make so much more money, right? So Randy, that was our time. It's so great to be young, okay? We're still young at heart. So that's just AI in short. So if you haven't decided yet whether you want to pursue and dedicate your life to using AI or be part of the AI industry, that's your biggest motivation there. I'll settle for the 0.7. Okay, you can go and share the 15 trillion among yourselves. Okay, so let me introduce AI Munchie and why do we call it AI Munchie? So basically, it's a Munchie is supposed to be a V-share. If you play Persian games a Munchie is somebody who is trusted, who was a confidant, is like the consultant for you. So what we did with AI Munchie is that it's an intelligent data extraction, and it can help you save costs on overpayments and financial misreporting. Give you an example. We have a client who processes 140,000 invoices, more than 140,000 invoices a month. Just imagine you receive the invoice and then you need to type it into your system, right? That's just basic data encoding. How long would it take you to encode an invoice? Maybe like 5 to 10 minutes. How many people do you need to do 140,000 invoices a month? After like my 10 fingers, I just forgot. Sige, never mind. It just needs a lot more people. So what does it do? It scans data from your documents, whether it's a PDF, whether it's an image, and then it uses AI to identify patterns and then extracts that structured data for human or machine consumption. So once we have the structured data, just take an invoice. So you have the vendor, you have the customer, you have the invoice date. Some of you might not be familiar with this one. Just basically take your receipt, okay? When you buy something from SM, or you eat Chicken Joy, or you eat in Jollibee, or eat at McDonald's, and you see your receipt, and imagine if you have to input that manually. Those are the items that we extract, okay? Now, what we do is that also extract only the relevant data as defined by the user. So we can extract like more than 40 variables. But if you don't need all of the 40 variables, you can just define, I just need like 10 or 20 of those, and those are the things that are relevant for me. Now, when we extract the data, we also provide a confidence level. We can say, hey, this is 80% accurate, this is 90% accurate, this is 100% accurate. And that is very critical because you're looking at relevant information. It's not like when you're doing OCR, like an E might appear like a number 3, that's okay. But here, if it's a 3, if it's 30 and then you just showed 3, then that's wrong. If it's 30 and you put in 300, then that has major impact on a lot of things. What it can also do, it is language agnostic. It doesn't matter whether it's done in Arabic, whether it's in English, whether it's done in any other, in Chinese. It doesn't matter. It should be able to do that because it's learning. You just train it and then it works, and also works in different currencies, whether you're doing it in Philippine peso, Australian dollar, US dollar, Canadian dollar, European euro. Okay, so it's not. And then the other thing that we really did is made it cloud native because of all. One is that for reach, how do we get to our customers faster? It has to be on the cloud. How do we scale? Because AI, as you know, takes up a lot of resources, especially on the training side. The execution or the evaluation for a model. So you have your sample data and you train it. It takes so much time, takes so much resources, right? But once you have the model and then just run your data that you want to evaluate, it will be so fast. So you actually have a lot of requirements to do that from a data model training side. But that's only the AI portion. And that's why I wanted to talk to you guys, is that it's not enough for you to look at the AI portion of it, but how do you actually create a product that wraps around it? And the challenges that we put in here is really, how do we make that happen? Because you have all of these great ideas. Where do you go from there? How do I collect data? How do I collect payment, right, from my customers? How do I authenticate? Where do I store? So those are all of the challenges that we went through and then figured out, okay, this is how we're going to do it. All right, so some of the key things that we look at is that we can extract all of the data and then pass it into an ERP. An ERP is like an enterprise resource planning system. It might be something like Dynamics 365, it's SAP, could be Salesforce, but I don't see Salesforce more on the ERP side. And then looking at a zero downtime with accurate data extraction. So when you're deploying something that's for global consumption, and we just had a downtime for Facebook, right? How many hours? 2-3 hours. I did not even notice it. Like it's not that important to me at that time. But for so many people who are making money out of their Facebook presence, that is significant. And that's already Facebook. And we do make mistakes. That's given, right? But we just have to strive for and target zero downtime. If we miss it, we miss by a few seconds. Okay. We do a lot of validation. So we look at end-to-end process from a PO to invoice to book processing. We can identify duplicate data. So if you have already received the invoice and then somebody sends the invoice, your vendor tries to bill you twice, then you'll be able to flag that. Okay. Then you can also price check. So if you said, oh, I bought this for $10, 100 pesos, and then your vendor tries to charge you 120 pesos, like, oh, hey, imagine the manual intervention that you have to do. For every invoice that you receive, you look at it, is it 100? I look at the purchase order, is it 100? And then you have an invoice that has like 100 items that you need to check. So how long does it take? Never mind. It's going to be a long process, and that is very, very mistake prone. And that's what we have eliminated. It's not only faster, but it is more accurate and minimizes errors. Okay. So we also have added business rules, and we know that globally we have different ways of collecting taxes like GST, VAT. So GST, I think some other countries you have VAT. In the US, it's a bit different. And then we also have to look at country-specific data regulation and compliance. So some countries would not allow data to get out of their country, right? So if you are looking at financial data, if you are in the Philippines, you just want to keep it in the Philippines. If it goes somewhere else, then you are, they would think that, okay, legally somebody can subpoena you and they can get your information. Now, if you're doing something illegal, then you would be worried. If you're not doing something illegal, you should still be worried, because you will never know. Somebody will go after your data, whether you know it or not. Okay. Um, and then we have different modes of how we receive data. So we can receive data via email. You can use our APIs. You can do it at FTP server, or you can upload through our dashboard. Also, we have built-in integrations with some ERP software like Dynamics 365, QuickBooks, MyOB in Australia. And then we also have an approval process so that only people who have access to that data can get it. And we also do accounts notification in case an issue with an invoice. In just an example, if we receive a data invoice and then we process it and it says like, hey, it's less than your threshold. So you actually define the threshold of what passes. If say only 95% you send to ERP, anything less than 95% confidence level, let's flag it and then we'll work on it. So basically the workflow for us is that if it's below your confidence level, you can submit that document for training. So that on the next training run, and we do training every day. So on the next training run, your document will be included and then it will automatically be reprocessed. And then it will get, hopefully it will pass, but most definitely it will pass. Okay. So just a basic flow of what, just for show of a diagram and visualization is that you can have a PNG, a JPEG, a PDF, a Word document, a text file, whatever it is that your input, and we push it into our cloud environment. So right now we're using Azure. We also use Google Cloud, and we can run it on AWS. And we run it through our AI model, and we have different models. So it's not only for one document, and even for a particular document, we have different models. So there's a different model for the US, there's a different model for Europe, there's a different model for Asia Pacific as well. It depends on where it's relevant, and we can, and it's so because we've created it to be agnostic to that, we can just basically, we're just subdividing the models so that it becomes context sensitive for you. And then from an output format, we can do CSV, JSON, or just a regular text file. And from a user consumption, we can send it to SQL, your ERP, or Dynamics 365. So basically end to end. Most of the time, we only focus on this side. All the research, the R&D that we do is on here. But how do you create a product for that? It's not. It might be, even when you do it for your corporation, the next question is that, hey, how do I use your system? And then I don't know. Right? So you open a Jupyter notebook and then just run it, and then, hey, I have job security. Anything you need, just come to me, and then I'll do it for you. That works for one or two users, but for you to scale, you have to create a wrapper around it. Okay. So just walk you through, like this is a simple animation. So you have the invoice, this is some things that we get, company name, summary description. And I use the invoice as an example, but it's not really just limited to invoices because we have defined it to be document agnostic. We just figured out that the go-to-market for us is address a need that a lot of companies have for manual processing. Okay. So you have, I don't know if you're familiar with business process outsourcing, wherein we have a lot of the, I don't call them call centers, but outsourcing in the Philippines, wherein they do this one, the back office, right? So they do this, they manually do this one, and imagine if you are able to introduce this one. Okay. So we pay that, we extract. This is just basically 12, but we extract more than 40 different variables, and we also extract line items. So if you have like, so if you just imagine if you ordered in Jollibee and you got chicken joy, and then you had what's this, peach mango pie, and then you have a Coke, and then you have fries. Each one of those items will be extracted. How many did you get? What was the unit price? If there is a tax, we will include, and we will get all of those information. Okay. Now, just another way of looking at it is that you send us an email. So basically, when you register to the system, there's a known email address for you. So whenever we receive an email from that address, we process it and then we route it into your model. So each of you, when you sign up, when you use AI Munchie, you actually create your model first and define, hey, which model would I want to use and which fields are relevant for me. And once I have that, you can basically just send data to it. You can have your own FTP server. You set up your FTP connections, or you can use our API. And our API uses Azure Active Directory and basically uses authentication there that is also secure. So in that case, it uses JW tokens. So again, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're just basically putting things together. And what we made sure is that this portion is the one that is like our secret sauce, right? Or you can actually upload it to the dashboard. And then after we process, so we do a lot of backend process here. We can do scaling. We're doing message queuing. We're using Kubernetes clusters. A lot of the cool stuff that works. And then it just spews out a JSON output. So we can send it to your email address that you want to receive it to, or if you have an FTP server, we send it to you. If you want, you can also read our API and say, hey, are there new messages to us? And then yeah, we send it to you. Or if you have external APIs, we can also send it to your APIs. So basically, it's just we're simplifying it, but it's really, I would say it's simple if you know what you're doing. It's difficult if you really don't know what you're doing. So now, just to show you the dashboard and metrics that we have. So here, this portion is when you're creating your tenant AI model. So what kind of model are you using, and what are the fields that are relevant to you? And if you'll notice, there's a weight on how important that field is. So if you're extracting every field and say the weight is 10, so we score that based on that. So if there are 10 fields and then 10 weight for each, so it's 10 times 10, that's 100, right? But you just multiply that whatever you want. And then if say, some fields are really not important, but I still would like you to extract it. So basically, yeah, we let you do that. And here you will see it's required or not. So if we are able to extract it, then it should be there. If it's not there, then it failed. It's just basically straight out, it failed. We will still give you the data, but then you can just submit it for reprocessing. Okay, and then you can have multiple users, different roles. And then once you have, give you an example here. This is an actual invoice. Once you have extracted it, you can actually review what are the header and the details that you can go from it. So we're displaying to you the actual document and then the result of the extraction for that document. You don't have to do this. Okay, if you just want to check once in a while, yeah, you can do this. But theoretically, once this is extracted, it just gets pushed into your ERP or other system. Okay, and then you just have a list of the different documents. See here, example, just a list of the different documents, and you have the status, whether it's already completed, it has been submitted, and whether it has failed. So other things that and when it was submitted, and what's the confidence level. Okay, and then a report is a summary of how many documents did you process for the day, how many were successful, how many were failed, how many did you submit for training. So basically just wrapping it all up. And this is very simple dashboard and analytics, but again, it just gives you a feel of what you should be looking at, and you can extend it some more, right, as you go along. But what other document types? You were talking only about invoices, but what other things you can do? So we can look at purchase orders as well. We can look at ID cards. So example, if you have a driver's license, so there are still some agencies or some companies that will require you to submit your driver's license, whether it's a scanned copy or a picture of it. When you apply for insurance, when you apply for car insurance, life insurance, you still submit and have to write a lot of documents, right? So you have to fill up the documents, still not online. And even if you do it online, what do? They create a file out of it, and then they store it, and then they submit it. Somebody has to do backend process. We can take away that portion. Electric bills, water bills, bid of sale, legal agreement. So we can, it's just a matter of training the models. Which fields do we need to extract, defining that model, and then just run it through that process. Okay, so what were the challenges that we faced? First one is choosing the right model. We are extracting text data from documents, right? From PDF and images and whatever. But how do we extract that data? What model do we use? Do we use deep learning? Do you use natural language processing? Those are the things that you may have to make a decision. And this one takes trial and error and expertise and experience also. Because you will get false positives. You will say, hey, my model is really, really good. But then sometimes you might be overfitting your model. Okay. And then once you submit your test data, not there. Okay. And then sometimes architecture should be compatible on how you want to organize and manage extracted data. Some of them will be still fuzzy. Some of them you can, okay, now I can use this one. This is JSON. So there's a lot of things that you have to work through here. Once you have chosen the right model, which you still have to do, you have sample data, you might have some dummy data. Next one is gathering data. And this is what Dave was talking about when some of the speakers, right? You have to get data that is representative of what you want to process. And this is the hardest part, because in our case, we are looking at financial information, okay? We have to have people disclose to us information, and we have to have NDAs, we have to, that's the biggest challenge, okay? And then multiply that across different geographies. So we're not only looking at getting data from one country, but we're getting data from a lot of different countries, okay? Now, once you have gathered that data, how do you secure it? Okay, where are you going to store it, and how do you retrieve it? What are your governance policies? Right now, we've seen a lot of data breaches because people just have access to data and they're not concerned about how secure it is, right? Especially when you have millions of, well, not millions, you have millions and millions and millions of data that you can work on and then just run them on the cloud, and you're not securing them. And then there you go, you lose a lot. What are the data governance policies that you have for privacy? Because especially this one, these are financial data, you have to make sure. And then how much can you store and how fast can you retrieve it? So it doesn't scale, it doesn't necessarily scale well. And that's why we're designing this to be cloud native, so that you can store as much data as you can and you can retrieve them as fast as you can. Now, you have to marry that with your data governance. How do you protect that data? You have to be very careful, okay? No matter what it is, security is sometimes that we just take for granted, but as custodians of very important data, especially if you're looking at from a national perspective, you're looking at the government might give you some data to work with, right? It might be all of the voters, it might be all of the registered drivers, or it might be something else. That data is very important. Just access to the data is something that you have to really worry about. And now, once you have that, you have to look at data quality. Once you're training the model with text documents based out of images and PDFs, that's how good is the quality? Is there, so imagine you have that image or you have that PDF. First is you have to determine if there is a text, okay? You have to detect it, and then you have to localize it, and then you have to recognize it. That's a lot of steps. In a human mind, that's simple, that's easy. If it reads Greek to me, it's Greek to me. I don't understand, I forget, right? I don't care. But this is something that we have to work with. So from an environment standpoint, when you look at the document, you have to see how complex is the scene, how many things are there in that image or in that document. If you scanned it, you have uneven lighting. So your lighting might be good in one side, it's not like perfect. When you get a PDF that's really clear and then that's electronically created and sent to you, that's fine. But if you have scanned documents, this is a big challenge. And then when you acquire the images, there's blurring, there's degradation, there's also perspective distortion. Imagine if you do a scan, right? Your scan is never perfectly square or rectangle or circle. There's skew on the document. And then because of that, your letters, your numbers will be skewed as well. Some of them will be the same size, some will be a smaller size. How do you account for that? Human mind, it's so easy. Just read it. Okay, I just have to get, oh, I need more glasses. I need my glasses. Otherwise, I don't have to worry about it. And then the actual text content, there's a variation of the aspect ratio. Some of the fonts are bigger, some of the fonts are smaller. Some of them might be slanted a little bit. Some of them might even, written vertically. And then different languages. So you have to look at those things. How do you account for all this variability? Your model should be able to look at this, okay? And the more data you have, the more accurate it becomes. Now there are some other that are OCR detection. This has been the longest time. The system that we replaced was using OCR. The accuracy was only 70-75%, and not even getting the line items. It's just basically getting the vendor, the dates, and then the total. Not getting the chicken joy, not getting the getting the fries, and not getting your Coke, right? So Just imagine you have ambiguous shape of letters and numbers. They are human readable. We have been trained since we were young. Teachers, right? You have trained us well to read the 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic. Okay, but they are not machine readable. Machine has been like, we have seen the evolution, but it doesn't really, hasn't gone that far. That's why we need AI. And then ambiguity, especially for financial documents, is a serious concern, because if you the discussion, the example I had before, an E or a 3 visually is similar, but if you make that mistake, you're dead, right? Let's imagine your bank account, you're depositing something, and then you deposited a check. You have the reader of the check and says, okay, this is supposed to be 100,000 pesos, and then it just read like 300 pesos. So you will cry. Okay. It does yield good results, but only on very specific use cases. That's why this is like just one step. You still need a lot of massaging. Sometimes what we do is that before we do OCR detection, we do alignment. So imagine the previous one wherein there's a skewing and there's a lighting issue, there's a distortion. So we do all of that first, and then after that we can do the OCR detection. So basically, you look at the image here, we're doing the document scan, we scan it, and then we do the pre-processing, and then we do some other stuff. I don't know. My guys were the ones who did this one. I just like guide them on what needs to be done. Okay, and then the output. And then the other concern for us was the accuracy. Remember, that was my main goal for them. For every extraction, you should give me a score, because if you don't give me a score, I don't know whether you're successful or not. And that's the accuracy level. You have it in recommendation engines. Recommendation engines, after you train it, it will give you will have a sample, and then you have a control data, and then you run it with that. And it will tell you that, okay, we have trained the model and the accuracy of this model is 75%. So it will give you recommendation 75% of the time that is correct. That is fine. That's a recommendation engine. But if you're reading an invoice and you only have a 75% accuracy rate, your customer will say, never mind, don't talk to us, right? That's not where we're back to OCR level. So that's the key goal. We have to have, and us AI guys, they were saying, how do I do that? It's like, you have to figure it out. That's a requirement that I need. You need to tell me how good is the extraction. So they were able to figure it out. Okay. So you have low data quality. How do you make sure you extract it properly? You have a very small training data. This is very critical. If you have small training data, then your accuracy is really, that's why the data gathering is very important. You have to beg. You have to do a lot of things to make it happen. Okay. And then you have noise with errors and outliers. And then you have data that are not representative. That happens, and then your result is biased. You will get really, really biased results. Okay. Give you an example on this extraction. We did a POC for a client. He gave us like 5 documents. We sent them through. Out of the 5, without knowing that document first, out of the 5, 3 were 100%, 2 were at 95%. And the reason why it was 95%, because in the document, on the number, somebody put a check mark. Okay, so it was a document scanned, but then it was like a check mark on the number, because somebody was manually verifying it. Okay, so once they sent it to us, they said, okay, we got confused. Remember, this is human readable, but not machine readable. So we had to train it. After we train it, boom, 100% accuracy. So some of the things, and we know it works. Okay. Now the biggest portion of it's, okay, you made it work. And this is my mantra, make it work, make it scale. Okay. So what if you become successful? What do you do? So that's why we made it very, very native cloud native. So we have to create a hosting environment so that users can get to it, and then it can handle processing of documents, thousands of documents per minute. So it can scale up, it can scale down. You also have to manage your costs. So this is one of the key challenges for us. How do we make it? So my mantra, and I've told Greg this, make it work, make it scale, make it maintainable, make it secure. Right? And if you make those happen, you are in a good place. Okay. The fifth one is make money, but that should be somewhere down the road. Okay.
It should follow.
It will follow. Okay, what were the advantages? High accuracy, we can process thousands of documents per hour without 99% without human intervention. The 1% is when we do get the failure and we just have to basically review and it's submitted to us and we review why it failed and we need to just make it part of the next training. Really good process efficiency. Imagine how many, it's like it takes 10 minutes. Just imagine if it takes you 10 minutes to process one document, it takes a few seconds for us to do it. And then we have the scaling and we can even do prediction of missing data. So if there's a missing data, we can say, okay, this might be the missing data and this is how we're going to fill it out. It's available on the cloud as a SaaS platform, software as a service, or it can be done on premise, but we would recommend to do it on the cloud. We can process any document format, images, PDF, handwriting. The handwriting, it just has to, you have to train more. It becomes very tricky, but just imagine the US Postal Service invested millions of how to recognize handwriting, just the zip code. So they have a sorter for mail and we do have a lot of mail, right? So basically it scans through the mail and then it will read the zip code where it's going to be sent. And that's basically how it's routed. And they spent a lot of that just to make sure that. But imagine millions of mail a day. How do you sort? Which one goes to Cebu? Which one goes to? You have mail sorters there, right, Greg or Dave?
Physical
You have
mail
somebody
sorter.
Yeah. That's why mail takes 3 days.
Yeah.
And that's transport, but routing it's so much easier. We've seen productivity by at least 72%, and then we have, again, I tell you, we have a client that processes about 140,000 invoices per month. 100, imagine how many people, like more than 300 to 500 people that you have to hire. And they can be redeployed to do more meaningful tasks. I'm not saying take them out, right? And what I'm saying is that they can do more meaningful tasks because this is something that can easily be automated and you don't have to really do much for it. Okay. All right. So basically we're on the Q&A. I hope I did not go over time. So the first question is that, yes, we're hiring. Okay, that's it.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. And yeah, we are actually on time, 5 minutes before 10 o'clock as per program. I would like to ask the participants, if you have questions, you can actually type in your questions at the Q&A box or button in your Zoom screen found on the bottom part of your screen. Feel free to ask, or you can also raise your hand if you like, and I think we can give you the screen, and I think we can let you talk if you
You
like
can
to.
ask in Bisaya, you can ask in Tagalog, you
Yes,
can ask in English, maybe a little bit Spanish. Okay.
yes.
For Chinese, Eugene.
And
Unfortunately, I haven't
Chinese.
gone through that one yet. I have Chinese plan, but no.
I thought you were Chinese because your family name is Canton. A
Yes,
middle name. Canton, as in
my
Canton.
great grandfather came from China. Yes.
Okay.
Mm,
Okay.
yeah. So while waiting for the question, sir, I was um, listening. While listening, I was thinking of if I am a fresh graduate, what key skills should I need to work in your company?
So it starts with values.
Yeah.
So Greg, I've told this one. Value for you is that one, you have to communicate properly. Okay. So you have to start listening. Don't, and sometimes that's just a tendency. When we ask people, um, what do you mean by communication? What's your understanding of communication? The first answer they will say is that to be understood. And that is the second part of it. The first thing is you have to understand first, and then you can be understood. So, because everything stems from there. Doesn't matter how good you are, if you don't listen, what happens? Not much, right? So that's one. The second one is that you have to be proactive. So, and proactive is just basically, I don't have to tell you everything. You know what the goals are, you know what needs to be achieved. and go and do your work, do your part. You can ask questions, and part of it is just basically, if you don't know what it is, ask the question and do your work. That's it. And then the third one is always strive for excellence. Okay. And when I say, and I ask people what is excellence, the answer is that doing my best. That is not excellent. That is doing your best. But I give the example, I will do my best to play basketball, but I will definitely suck every time, right? Because I'm too short. I will never be excellent in basketball in that case, no matter how I practice. So basically, excellence is doing things the best that you can do them. And then the fourth one is being customer focused. Really look at what do people need. And that's where, as Filipinos, we are a service-oriented people, right? We are very, what's this? Hospitable. Sometimes we give more than what we have. And it might be good, it might be bad, but that's a key foundation of how you become successful. You are always looking for what's best for others. After that, things will come to you. You know, those are just the key strategies. See, I never even talked about technical skills, right?
Yeah.
Because you guys are taking care of that. You're the teachers. You're taking care of the technical skills. So
Thank you.
it's
That's
more about behavior.
yeah, that's
Actually, Eugene is
very
also a life coach. Okay. So during our weekly meeting, we don't talk much. We're the ones talking something technical, but Eugene is the one talking like more in the behavioral. In fact, he's even more of a teacher than me.
Okay, so let me. We have two questions. So one is from
Yeah.
Maria Rodelin Tibon, and her question is: do hardware matter? Does hardware matter? And what are your tips in the minimum hardware requirements to train the model? And this is very key, because if I ask you to train the model and you're really using a very powerful model, it will be so hard for you to get your own individual hardware. To get just even to get it. So I just bought an NVIDIA RTX 3070. I waited like almost a year just to get it, to be able to run AI and ML on my local machine. Why go through the trouble? You can use the cloud, and that's what we did. We rented virtual machines that have GPU capabilities that are designed for AI, and it does matter, because yeah, you can train your model and it takes you 3 days, or you can train your model and it takes you minutes. And that's one of the key things that we look at, is how do we scale that training? Because if your training takes you several hours, by the time you're done, it might not be relevant. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. Yes, it does matter, hardware. For Ferdy, he's asking, price is now $199, and is it full package or basic premium? And so basically the pricing that we have is based on the number of documents that you process on a monthly basis. So there's a minimum threshold. So you start for smaller companies and you say like lower value. So if you process like maybe 100 documents, 100 invoices. So we designed this one for small businesses and large enterprises. So if you are a small company, you have maybe 2 or 3 people, and you do get 5 or 10 invoices, then you can do it manually, right? But once you get into 100 invoices a month, then that's like one full-time person that you have to hire just for that, or you can outsource it to somebody else. So we have it something like $25 or $50 for that. So it's not much. You don't have, it's less than the cost of paying for a full-time employee to do it for you. So it's based on the number of documents. If you do exceed, there's just an overage for it. So that's how we design it. From Festijo, in your current implementation, how do you ensure confidentiality, privacy of the data? And that's why we're using the cloud here. So basically what we do is that for every customer, we instantiate a separate database for them. So that's one. So there's no commingling and co-mixing of data from one customer to another customer. So we're already separating that. The second one is that we put it in the data center that is closest to the customer. So if the customer is in the US, the data is only in the US. If you are in the Philippines, but we don't have a data center in the Philippines, then we store it closest to you, which is Singapore. Okay. A second one. The third one is that all of these things are done via keys and being encrypted. So basically we don't have, it's encrypted at rest. So we don't, if somebody picks it up, if they don't have the keys, then they won't be able to see it. The third one is that the only guys who have access to the actual data is basically not much, like 2 or 3 people that has access to it. because everything else they just have a proxy that gets to retrieve that, and they just see the reports. They don't have access to the actual data. And to even make it further secure is that you can store it in your own data store. So remember I talked to you about storing it in your FTP server. So basically what you do is that put it in your FTP server, we read it, we extract it, and then we send it back to your FTP server. So it only stays in our servers a short period of time, and then it gets destroyed and then sends back to you the result. That's it. We're not doing that. So you can use FTP. Now we also have integrated with Dropbox. So if you want it to be stored in Dropbox, you can do that as well. Okay.
Okay.
Ferdy, there's one more. Ferdy, can I
yeah.
be employed and hire me
Yeah.
even though I'm here in the Philippines? We already have a company in the Philippines. We have about 5 guys now working there, and we're hiring.
Okay. Okay, and I think one last question here on the chat box. Do you
Yeah.
accept remote internship if in case considering of the flexible learning mode limited face-to-face right now?
Yep. And that's one of the key things. That's why I'm excited, because I grew up in the Philippines, right? Well, I did not grow tall, but that's when I grew older. And I want to give back also. It's part of it. It's like I owe a lot where I grew up in. I was born in Mindanao. I was born in Davao. I studied elementary and high school in Cebu, and then I graduated from college and worked in Manila for a longer time. So
Thank
it's
you for that information, sir. And I think our participants are taking screenshots already or contact information, especially perhaps for our administrators having a problem of sending off their internship OJT, especially of this um, not able to meet physical classes. So thank you very much. In this juncture, if you have further questions, I think you have there the all social media connections. You can approach Sir Eugene if you have further questions, and perhaps Greg also can help you out
Yeah.
if for the
Greg can
Philippines.
help you out. So our goal is really to have,
Yeah.
because some of the things that we're working, just imagine we're doing a lot of, it's not being done commonly in the Philippines, right? So if you want to go and learn these things, it will be so hard for you. You will be starting from scratch, and you don't want to do that. You want to go and do it with somebody who has done it before. And that was my challenge before, because the internet was not as prevalent. I was just lucky that when I was with ABS-CBN, we had fast access to internet, and we were one of the first ones to have it. So I was able to deploy a lot of these new technologies faster than anyone else. But after that, it became like, okay, it's not access anymore. It's basically knowledge and who has expertise. And that's the beauty of the internet now. You can have access to any of these guys. It's not only limited to us. It's just about anyone else.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we have a lot of things learned from the discussion. Let's be proactive, let's drive excellence, and let's be customer focused. So in this juncture, we would like to present our certificate of appreciation for recognizing Sir Eugene for sharing his valuable time and expertise as a presenter for the activity Fourth Computing Society of the Philippines Special Interest Group on Information, Communication, Education e-conference. Sir, we hope to see you in person, at not necessarily at Siliman, but perhaps in USJR on in some other
Yeah.
avenue, perhaps next year. In
Yeah,
our,
Next
we are
year, next year,
hoping.
Eugene, we're going to have ICE conference either in Baguio or in Boracay, or probably in the one down south. What's that date
anywhere is
again?
okay. Anywhere is okay.
Uh,
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Let me proceed.